thanks to everyone in the room. These sessions are just a way of the faculty making our students, but also more broadly, as people who are busy practicing, aware of what we offer through our School for Advanced Legal Studies. We also are trying to encourage our students to start thinking a little bit ahead. So we have some intermediate year students here, because a lot of the funding cycles actually work in a little bit of an awkward way and don't necessarily sort of track with the application and acceptance or offer process. So it's just about sort of, yeah, trying to think ahead so that you're not missing perhaps some of the funding opportunities that do come up. And we can talk a bit about the funding later after our lecturers have talked about their programs. So today, today's Masters Monday is about marine and environmental law and about the MPhil in Criminology, Law and Society. We've combined two today. We've got Prof. Sandy Patterson, who is the director of the Institute for Marine and Environmental Law, and we've got Prof. Kelly Molt, who is the director of the Centre of Criminology. So Sandy, I'm going to hand straight over to you. Yeah, just crack on.
Yeah, so I've got 30 minutes, and I'll be done by 1:30, and then it's Kelly, and then you're going to deal with group questions.
Yeah.
So I've just put something visual for you together. I just want to see if we can get it to work. So I was going to present first, or share first. Share first. Share that. Choose that. So I'm going to introduce myself and Melanie in a moment, but I first thought I want to tell you why we do what we try to do. And why we do what we try to do is because we want to conserve our Earth. We only have one Earth, and our Earth is a very fragile Earth. And what we're effectively doing to our Earth is this: we are devouring it at an unsustainable rate. And what we're also doing is dismantling the Earth systems which are essential to function. Now, if we were a clever species, we would be not devouring our Earth at an unsustainable rate, and we wouldn't be dismantling its Earth systems, which we are dependent upon. But unfortunately, we're not a particularly wise species at the moment. And what we're also doing is we're heating up our planet beyond belief. There have been some interesting studies done, and I found this particular diagram, which I think is a really useful diagram. At the moment, it looks as though we're moving towards about 2.1 degrees by 2100. So if every one of these little parts of this diagram reflect what is the reality going to be like on planet Earth at different degrees. And if we're going up to 2.1, Greenland melts, polar bears become extinct, water supply is affected, together with all of these other particular impacts which we're experiencing at the moment. They reckon that if Greenland's ice sheet melts, we're looking at about 25 feet added to our ocean levels, which is just intolerable. You can imagine how many cities will be flooded and so forth. So what we're effectively doing is placing an undue load on Mother Earth. We're effectively making it unviable for our own viability in the long term on the Earth. Every one of those little circles represents a different country, and the different colors represent the different regions. If you look down on this little circle over here, that's the size, the sustainable threshold, which we can effectively continue to live on Mother Earth. And every country, and why has it gone bigger?
Because it's a smart board.
How do I go back?
Do this, Sandy. Squeeze it in.
There we go. Thank you. Every country which is bigger than that particular threshold is living beyond the means of which we can live on this Earth. So if you look at the majority of the countries, over and above those countries in the core here, the majority of the countries, of the citizens in those countries, are living well beyond the sustainable threshold. So who are we and what do we try to do? Well, with that reality in mind, we are a small group called the Institute of Marine and Environmental Law, who seek to use law and policy to try and push us onto a more sustainable long-term trajectory. At the moment, we have 2 full-time employees. I'm this black box over here. My name is Sandy Patterson. I'm the director of the Institute. I've been around at UCT for quite a while, for about 19 years. Before that, I was a lawyer. So I bring both practical legal expertise as a lawyer in trade together with academic expertise. And our other full-time permanent member is Melanie Murcock. Melanie, would you like to briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. So thanks, Sandy. Sandy's covered what we do. I think the one slightly differentiating point that I try to bring as a social justice scholar is the idea that all of those impacts and responsibility for them is not evenly distributed, but primarily driven by a small percentage of the population and by particular humans who live in a particular way, advancing a neoliberal capitalist world order. And so in pollution law and natural resources law, which I teach, we try and grapple with those socio-ecological and economic realities as we examine the key drivers of pollution and how natural resource exploitation and extraction is occurring in ways that commodify the earth and contribute to this very bleak picture that Sandy has showed us. So in the courses I teach, I try to adopt a transformative approach, as does Sandy in his courses too, to show how we need to reform the law to grapple with these realities. And so it's a very challenging course, both of them very challenging courses, because they present very uncomfortable truths about human existence from this particular capitalist approach, and ask us to consider whether the law is facilitating this bleak picture or trying to stop it. And of course, the answer is a bit of both. And then we explore how to leverage the parts that are trying to stop this exploitation and destruction and use those hooks to advance social justice alongside other forms of justice that protect the planet. So that's me, and I'm going back now to teach pollution law. So I wish you a wonderful rest of the introduction. I was at UP, for University of Pretoria, for a long time before moving here to the University of Cape Town. I also taught environmental law there. And before that, I was also in practice, mainly working for the polluters. So now I get to be on the side that aligns more closely with my values, which is obviously very gratifying.
Melanie, thanks for traipsing across in the midst of lecturing. Much appreciated. So those are our two full-time staff. We are hoping by the end of the year to have an extra recruit on board, which will be great. But we also have two extra people who are part of us. That is Olivia Rumble. She runs something called Climate Legal. She is a adjunct senior lecturer. And then we've got Professor Jan Gruzescu, who's an emeritus professor who forms part of us. And those are the key areas which we find intriguing through our research. You can see we traverse quite a diverse array of things, with most of the lecturing done by myself and Melanie, but we hope to have someone else on board fairly soon. So as I mentioned, we try and use law and policy to try and shape our impacts on the earth, the way we live on the earth, onto a more sustainable trajectory. One of the things we do in addition to our research is run a series of master's programs, and we have three different key variants which are worth bearing in mind. The postgraduate diploma in environmental and/or marine law has four core courses. Not four core courses, but you have to do 4 courses. The middle variant is called an LLM professional, where you do 4 courses, and then in addition to each of those courses, something called a professional research task of 5,000 words each. And then there's the full LLM or MPhil by coursework and dissertation, with the dissertation being about 25,000 words. People always say, which one shall I do? Well, I indicate to them, if you just want a postgraduate degree by coursework, postgraduate diploma. If you are in practice or you want to go into practice and gain both the academic and the more practically orientated skills, do the LLM professional. That's where the bulk of our students are. They find the most value. And if you have long-term academic inclinations, you want to ultimately become an academic, then the last variant is the one for you. And all of those, we run in 2 different specializations. We have an environmental specialization and a marine and environmental specialization, with the different courses forming part of those reflected on this particular diagram, which you can find you'll find the stipulation of what courses are compulsory and what courses are optional, and the structure of those in the handbook. The one on the left is for environmental and the one on the right is for marine and environmental. But that's how it looks in most years. There's a slight variation next year because I'm hoping to be on sabbatical, so there's a slight truncation, but you'll still find there enough courses to complete in order to complete both variations. The Fs indicate first semester, the S is second semester, and the blocks is something we've introduced to enable students from outside of Cape Town to participate in the program, and also those who are working. They can participate partly in the program, even if they're working outside of Cape Town. And how those block weeks work is we bring students towards the beginning of each course to Cape Town. So their first week in each course, they're in Cape Town. Then there's a distance learning component where they can be wherever they wish to. And then there's a second block teaching component towards the end of each course. Week 1 here, next sometimes 11 or 12 weeks away, and then the 13th week here. We divide each of the courses into a whole series of distinct themes. So in block week 1 in each course, we cover the first half of the themes. We cover it in advance. You then consolidate it in the first half of the distance learning component. You then read in anticipation for the latter second half of the themes, which we then consolidate in the second block teaching week. And then there's a week for exam preparation, and we do it in the form of a take-home exam, so that if you're outside of Cape Town, you come down for block week 1, block week 2, but you don't have to then come down and write the exam in person here. You can write it online with the different places you need to be at those different times reflected on that particular slide. As I've mentioned, you can do the program part-time or full-time, and I just want to emphasize that if you want to do it full-time, you mustn't be working at the same time, because these are postgraduate programs and the workload is extensive. So if you are working full-time or part-time, you need to do the degree part-time, which is 1 course and 1 professional task. If you are doing the professional task there, the professional master's variation. If you're doing it full-time, then it's 2 courses and 2 professional research tasks. And if you happen to be doing the LLM by coursework and minor dissertation, then instead of the professional tasks, you'll be doing your dissertation full-time over the course of that year, or part-time generally over the course of 2 years. Why study it? Well, I believe it's the most important area of law there is at the moment, because without a planet, we have no place to exist. So this is the area of law which is seeking to ensure that we can continue to live viably on this particular earth. Secondly, it is an intriguing world because you're dealing with things in a very tangible and practical manner. You can see the things you're seeking to protect. They're very tangible. You can go and see the species which are threatened. You can go and see the areas which are under threat. You can go and see the smoke billowing out of the smokestack. You can go to a waste disposal site and see the toxic wastewater permeating down into the groundwater structures. You can see the citizens who are affected by it, the citizens living in those particular areas around the waste disposal sites, around the energy generation facilities up in Gauteng. They're dying from sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide emissions and so forth. So it's a very, very tangible area of law focused on, and accordingly we teach it in a fairly tangible way. We give you a lot of examples so you can actually see how the law either works or doesn't work in response to all of those particular environmental crises. It's still a major growing area of law. We have between 20 and 30 students we've had historically since about 2014 on the program, and most of them find employment. And the places you can find employment is incredibly varied, because you can find employment in NGOs, you can find employment in big law firms, in smaller law firms, boutique law firms, in NGOs. I started as an environmental lawyer in the only boutique environmental law firm in South Africa, all the way down back in about 2002. 1 law firm with 6 environmental lawyers. Now, if you go and look how many environmental lawyers there are, you realize how this area is just growing and growing and growing and growing as people realize how important it is. There's also a very fun area of law to be involved in. We spend a lot of time with our students doing interesting things. This is the land use planning law students down in Scarborough, where they have their field site of their research task, where they're asked to object to a wetland development. In class time, we also deal with various scenarios. This is students preparing for a debate, a fictional debate before the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species Conference of the Parties, where there was, I don't know if anyone follows CITES here? No one? It's a big convention dealing with international trade, and there was a lot of debate around African elephants and whether trade restrictions should be increased or decreased. We spend a good couple of days down at this beautiful place down near Cape Point, where we I believe it's important to get out of a venue like this in order to actually understand what it is we're seeking to protect through the law. We do a lot of, particularly in certain of the courses like land use planning law, we do a lot of scenarios so you can really understand how the legal framework works and so forth. And to give you an extent of the nature of our cohort, what's very, very enriching as a lecturer is our cohort is incredibly mixed. We have students from across Africa, we have German students, we have American students, we have legal students fresh out of their law degrees, we have law students as in senior attorneys who've decided to retool to become environmental lawyers, we have judges, we have non-lawyers as in environmental assessment practitioners, government officials, all sitting in one classroom, and that's your community. And that community is a very important part of your learning, because you learn from each other as you learn from us. So that's it, a broad, quick overview of our program. You're very welcome to contact me anytime. I'm the program convener, so on our website you'll find out my details. So if you have queries, contact me. The one very exciting thing we had news of recently is that we've managed, have we?
We're getting there.
We're getting there. It looks as though we'll have 3 full scholarships, as in covering all of your fees for 3 students based on academic merit next year, which is great. Secure the funder, which is we're very excited about. But otherwise, we love being in the classroom with the students, and the students, I think, enjoy being in the classroom with us. We expect a lot, but we give a lot. That's us. Are there any questions from you? Was it all so clear?
Yes.
And you're not even here to listen to me, you're here to listen to Kelly. Okay.
Any questions from online, Gaby?
There don't seem to be any questions. Any questions from anybody online?
Those in the room, are you here for environmental or criminology?
Environmental.
Okay. Would you be interested in doing it full-time or part-time?
Full-time.
Full-time. Best to try and do it full-time. I know it's a big investment of time and energy, but I think it's just easier to manage if you're doing it full-time. But my plea to those who are going to study it full-time is study it full-time. Don't study and try and work part-time. It really becomes unmanageable. What's the load? I think it's
950, 1200 or
yeah, because I divided it and it worked out at about, I mean, studying full-time is full-time. I worked out, if I looked at the time invested in a dissertation and 4 courses, or a dissertation and the 4 research tasks, it's, I think, 54 hours a week, which is heavy. But the more, I always say to the students, the more you put in, the more you get out. You can put less in and get through just, or you can put the full amount in and do well and really get a lot out of it.
coursework is 900 hours in a year if you're doing it full-time, 450 part-time on our program structure, and your minor dissertation is 1200 hours of work. So if you add that together, that's a full-time job.
And think about the different formulations of the programs. As I said, I think most students get the most out of the LLM profession. The other thing is the research tasks are easier to manage because they're 5,000 words each. It's a prescribed topic, you do them. You don't have to think about your own topic and weather dissertation over a 12-month period. Is it weathering a dissertation? You can grow through dissertation. Okay. I am in room 6.27. So if you want to come and chat to anyone, you're welcome to do so.
Thanks, Sandy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gaby, do you want to ask if there's any criminology people? Because if there aren't, it may not make sense.
Vaguely interested.
Oh, okay.
I
There's
came from
something- oh, there's-
environmental, but
Up to
No.
the multi-environmental, like I said.
And we're also recording, so
Okay.
we'll post the recording so that as things.
Thanks, Gaby, for organising.
Thanks, Sandy. And when Kelly's finished, if after you've got questions for her, we can look at some of the key issues around funding.
Don't think we really.
I don't know, it's fine.
Cheers, Gaby.
You can buy me a copy
No,
tomorrow
no.
to make up
Okay.
when the truck's back.
Good luck, Gaby.
Okay, let me see. Give me 1 second, everyone. Sandy said half an hour, and now he's just been too quick.
There are quite a few people online who indicated they're interested in criminology.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So, Gaby, I think I'm not sharing yet, right?
You're not sharing yet. There you go. Go to your window. You go to.
Yeah, it says sharing screen. Just check on your computer.
I can see it. Do you want to just reduce the meeting block in the corner?
Yes. And you're gonna who's the watch the over there for me, right? Perfect. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Kelly Moult. I'm from the Centre of Criminology up on the 6th floor, the busiest place in the building, always. Just down the corridor from Sandy, the second busiest place in the building. So you're here to hear about the two best programs, I think, in the postgrad space, although we wouldn't say that in front of anyone else. So yeah, we do an MPhil, LLM, and postgraduate diploma in Criminology, Law and Society. And so I'm here to tell you a little bit about the structure of that program and the Centre of Criminology. So the Centre of Criminology has a long history. We were established in the 1970s as a multidisciplinary interfaculty research and teaching unit. And we are anchored in the Faculty of Law to bring that cross-disciplinary focus of kind of criminology, which sits in mostly kind of in sociology and allied disciplines, into the questions, into the Faculty of Law. So, and in doing so, we bring a unique focus, I think, in terms of research, criminal justice practitioners, policymakers, and legal scholars. So we definitely operate in the tradition of critical activist scholarship, and we're interested in how the ways we think about crime, violence, safety, and justice sit alongside or are different than, in some cases, the centrality of the state, and how we can think about kind of wider notions of justice and how we straddle those two things. So we are definitely focused on research and teaching in this area, and particularly the nexus between those two things. We bring researchers into the classroom a lot and take our students outside, much like Sandy does. Our orientation is explicitly Southern focused. We're very interested in the Southern criminology conversation, in connecting with Southern scholars in other places who are doing similar work as us, and in building the next generation of people to take our places. So that's very much about us. We work on a number of very different topical things. I'm going to show you some of our staff just now. That's kind of a summary. But we're very much interested in looking at how we research and teach on these issues that's relevant to the African context, specifically to South Africa, and then to building knowledge in that kind of Southern frame. This is us at the centre, also a small centre, myself and Professor Irvin Kinnis and Rima Nanol Hirilal, also soon to be doctor, are all located in the 6th floor space. And then we're joined by two postdocs, Ellen Krichler and Sisanda Muzulwa. I work on gender-based violence, issues of administration of justice. I'm very interested in discretion, both in overt and hidden places. I'm interested in research methods, and I'm the research ethics chair in the faculty. So methods and ethics conversations are always going on in our unit. Irvin is very well known in his work on policing and gang governance, organized violence. He teaches the course on policing. Rima also works on gender-based violence, but also interested in cybercrime, cyber harassment, and those kinds of things from a preventive space. Sisanda works on youth violence, corrections, and community perspectives on crime. She comes from a disciplinary home of social development, so brings quite a different orientation to criminology. And then Anine is interested in murder and hard data. So she's worked a lot on murder statistics, police statistics, crime statistics, what they can tell us and not tell us, and on issues related to drug policy. We also, Simon Howell is only recently joined us and is also interested in drugs, but in media depictions of crime and criminals and how we draw inference from the discourses that are provided to us around how we shape our thinking. So as I said, we also offer a postgrad diploma, which is essentially just 4 courses, a master's program, which is 4 courses, and a minor dissertation. And we offer the master's program at either part-time or full-time in course structure. We don't offer a professional master's, so ours is only coursework and minor dissertation. So the program structure, which I'm going to go into the courses for you in a couple of minutes. This is an example of the full-time structure. So you have 2 required courses. We believe in the importance of theory as an anchoring feature of our program, and research methods. Research and practice is the currency of our program. And so those 2 things form the core component in the first semester. And you then get to take your 2 electives and work on your minor dissertation, the minor dissertation throughout the year, but specifically in the second semester. If you're going to take it part-time, you do 1 required course and 1 elective in the first year, 1 required, 1 elective, and the minor dissertation in the second year. So essentially, you're just spreading your course load over 2 years, and that's the big difference. Sandy's course teaches in block lectures. Ours accommodates people who might otherwise be engaged by starting only at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So your courses will each have 1 meeting period, which runs for 3 hours, beginning at 4. So if you take theories of crime, it's on a Monday from 4 to 7 p.m. and we meet weekly in that way. So our required courses, as I said before, the Law in Action Research Methods is a course that is common to both our criminology and law and society kind of focus areas. That would be one of your required courses, and that runs on a Thursday. You can then choose one of the 2 theory courses depending on what's on offer. So you can either do theories of crime and social order, which will have the pleasure of my company, or you can do law and society in Africa, which takes a more kind of sociological view at the law, and that is run actually in a block format in March. As I mentioned when we were chatting just now, it is important to realize that these are a degree of a master's nature is a full-time job, as Sandy also underlines. It's very difficult, it's impossible, I think, to work full-time and take a full course load. I think it's even onerous if you are doing it part-time, but people make it work. But I do think it's worth being upfront about the fact that it is a lot of work. There's a lot of prescribed reading. We run our classes all seminar style. It's very interactive. There's tasks that we ask you to do in preparation for every week. And so you need to make sure that you can take that on. Obviously, the Centre of Criminology staff are all here to support you, but you need to have enough time available to be able to, come to class prepared to really maximize out of the discussion. So I, possibly couldn't have chosen any smaller font for this, but hopefully you can kind of see. So theories of crime and social order aims to provide an understanding of the theoretical ideas that have shaped and are shaping criminal justice policy, and the way in which both implicit and explicit policy agendas are realized in practice. So we kind of do a history of the main kind of schools of thinking around crime and violence, the way in which we both understand crime, but how we control it. So that is, and obviously we take a Southern view in that. That course runs every week on a Monday and requires satisfactory attendance at seminars. It's a combination of shorter assessment papers and a term paper. We also do a class presentation and a debate in that course. Law and Society in Africa looks at the way that the law shapes and is shaped by our social, political, and cultural institutions and practice. And so that also engages in that space with ideas like legal consciousness, legal pluralism, particular areas, focus areas that we might look at during the year. And that has response papers, a presentation, and a final paper. Sexual offences and the law is block taught. You don't have to have an LLB degree to take this class. It's very interdisciplinary. So it looks specifically at the utility of the law in addressing sexual violence. So these are these last courses are electives that you may choose two from. And this course is presented along with colleagues from the Women's Legal Centre and other units in South Africa who are working specifically on sexual violence. We run punishment and human rights in the second semester, which gives you a sound theoretical understanding of the justifications of punishment and human rights, how we think about why we punish, what the utility of punishment is, and then look at how it works in practice. So that also runs weekly. We teach a class called Forensics in the Law, which is aimed to help you to acquire an introduction to the use of science to solve crime, give you an understanding of how we use forensics to the law, but most importantly, what the limits of doing so are in a policing system such as in South Africa. So we look at a lot of different kind of branches within the forensic sphere, different kinds of prints and impressions, fibers, firearms, evidence, etc., and look at how we collect that evidence, what the process is that it goes through, and what the key weakness areas of that are. Police and policing helps you to get both an academic and professional expertise in the governance of security, and gives us an understanding into how we've thought about policing historically, what's changed in policing in South Africa, what are the alternatives or alternate forms of policing. So really a kind of all-around 360 look at police and how they police. We have a course called Victims and Victimology, which gives you an understanding of how we think about victims of crime and social harm. We look at this from a theoretical perspective to look at how criminal justice practices serve victims, how we can create systems that are responsive to victims, and what are the key kind of quick questions that we may ask. This course goes much wider than just sexual violence, but also other kinds of interpersonal violent crime, organized crime, terror, environmental degradation. How do we think about harm and victimization in those spaces? And then the last course among our electives is criminal process and human rights. You do need an LLB or equivalent to take this course because it looks at kind of substantive and procedural law, including evidentiary issues, and looking at how we balance those considerations with kind of human rights context and the kind of contemporary challenges that might arise in cases. We do have a minor dissertation. If you want to graduate in December, you have to hand it in by the 15th of September of every year, which most people don't do. They take the full calendar year and hand it in just before the start of the first semester of the following year. How do we decide what kinds of minor dissertation topics you may take? The center is very open. The main issue is whether we have expertise and supervisor availability. But you can see from our slide of the staff at the center, there's a very wide range of substantive areas, both that we work on or that we work with colleagues on. And so it's very, very seldom that a student doesn't find a supervisor or a home for what they would like to work on. We encourage as diverse a set of ideas as possible. If it's at all practical to do it through research, we are very supportive. We have lots of links both in the system and outside of the system in NGOs and other service providers who are working in the criminal justice space, and can often make sure that students find a home to be able to do their dissertation research. At the moment, we have topics all the way from retributive justice to sexual violence to domestic violence service provision to policing of unhoused people, all going right now in the Centre of Criminology, CCTV, policing LGBTQI community. So really a lot of diversity. What you're aiming at there is a 25,000 word paper, which is about 80,000 words, which seems like a lot. But if you think about it, after you've done your literature review and whatever, it's really only what you have left is the scope of about 2 term papers. So you do have to think very carefully about finding a dissertation topic that allows you to do something substantive in the space that's provided. And so that's the support work that we do in the first semester in the research methods class. the deliverable for research methods is a proposal. So we use that semester to help you shape your ideas, introduce you to the kind of people that you should be speaking to, help you find a supervisor so that it's really as seamless and painless a process as it can be. That's kind of the criteria of it. I'll leave it there for you to read, but it really is not you don't have to do something groundbreaking. You have to do something that's thoughtful, well-researched, that speaks into the area of criminology and shows that you've mastered the techniques of competent research, that you have the capacity for, thought and reasoning that is translatable, for example, into policy or into the kind of practice space. That's all I have to say. I don't think we also do a lot of interactive. I should have put some pictures. I'm going to update my slides after Sandy. We do lots of visits in the centre to places in the criminal justice system. So you'll definitely visit a court. We sometimes manage to arrange visits to prisons. Police and policing and forensics run in the second semester. So in the course of those classes, the cohort will visit the forensic labs, the police training college, a police station. So we really do take our students out into the places that we're talking about in the classroom. We bring lots of guest speakers in who are, sometimes very well known, sometimes controversially so, to try and get us to think in real terms about the things that we're reading in academic terms for our classes. I think all of us structure our lectures in a way that is very collaborative, that we like our students to create a cohort to feel like they know us well enough to come into our office and chat about something that's either interesting or something they're facing with difficulty in their work. So we really are a very open centre up on the 6th floor, with a balcony that has the best view of the mountains. That's one of our best selling points, right? And so we also have a postgraduate criminology student collective that's very active in shaping that conversation for themselves, hosting seminars, etc., etc. So yeah, we hope that those of you that are interested will consider coming to join us. Maybe I should see if anyone has a question. Hi.
Hi, sorry. I missed the first few minutes
Yes.
because I thought it started at 1:30. So what's the breakdown of how many courses you need to take? And
Okay, so it's 4 courses. If you're doing it full time, it's 4 courses, two required, 2 electives, and then your minor dissertation, which you do throughout the year.
then a second question. So I was at the presentation also for the international law masters the other day.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the requirement to get to that is about 70 GPA.
I think it's 65. I think all of our masters are above 65.
It would be the same.
Yes, correct.
And would you look at either motivational?
We could. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from putting in an application, right? I will tell you that your statement of interest is really important to me. What you probably don't know is that we see your whole application pack, right? So if you essentially are going to write the same letter for me as you're going to write for Sandy's program, I'm going to get to see both of those, right? So that doesn't express your interest in my program, and I'm sure neither for him. So really, it's about you need to think about why. I mean, of course, we know that you have to take a first and a second choice. You have to write 2 letters, but what you put in there can be really persuasive for me. So there have been instances where students have been borderline, and where I've asked to see writing samples or other things that can help to convince me. Yeah, it all depends. We look at every application as all the staff in the centre, and do our best to really think as thoughtfully as possible about whether our program is a good fit for you. So to the extent that you can help explain to us why our program is a good fit for you, why we are a good fit for you, that's really helpful to us.
I apologize, this is unrelated to this specific
Mhm.
program. These Masters Mondays, do they happen every Monday for this month or?
Every second Monday
Every second
until probably the week before the application deadline, which is the 30th of September, it's the end of September. So if you go onto, in fact, if you go onto our Instagram, you'll see the links there to the Masters Mondays.
Okay.
And there's a schedule on the School for Advanced Legal Studies website,
Thanks.
which sessions are happening.
Check
So
it
there
out.
probably, I think there are about 4 or so more sessions, 4
Okay.
or 5.
Sure.
Yeah.
How many sessions have there been so far?
Just the one we started 2 weeks ago.
International, okay.
Yeah, with the international.
Haven't missed many.
No,
Okay.
no.
So I see there's a question in the chat as whether the PGDip will be on offer next year. Yes, it will be.
Can you just go into a little bit of detail about the real difference between, like, what's the value in doing it? Why would you do a PGDip rather than an MPhil?
Okay, so if you qualify, I don't think there's any value in doing a PGDip. And that's because you would essentially be doing another qualification at the same level. The main difference is that if you come out of an undergrad without an honours degree, you don't qualify for entrance to the LLM. So you would do the PGDip. The courses are the same; they're just assessed at a very different level. But the length of the required pieces is shorter, etc. You don't have to do a minor dissertation to be able to do for the PGDip. It's just the 4 courses straight. There is the possibility of upgrading if you get really good marks in your first semester in the PGDip. We can assess to upgrade you into the master's program. It does mean, however, that you have to take an additional course in the second year because 2 of your courses are at the wrong NQF level then for qualification. But it's very much, we deal with it on a case-by-case basis with the assistance of the Deputy Dean for Postgrad in seeing what is available and what will work.
So can I then confirm you can do a master's in criminology, law and society without an LLB? Except,
yes,
but then you can't.
In fact, we love that.
Okay.
Yes. So the benefit of criminology, law and society is that we have a very mixed classroom. So there's going to be sociologists, anthropologists, people that have come in with an undergrad in psychology or social work, and also people who've got LLBs in the room. So it really encourages us to think. I mean, for the LLB students, it's like a whole paradigm shift because the idea that the law isn't the law and is something that's socially constructed and constantly negotiated and is quite is a different way of thinking about things. But their perspective on the centrality of the law also presses students who come from that more sociological tradition to kind of engage with that too. So it's a really great productive space. Those of us that are non-lawyers, like me, all of us are criminologists in the centre. We like to say that we draw you over to the right side, but we're only really joking when we say that. It's really great to have a lot of diversity in the classroom. We also, much like Sandy's program, have students that are straight out of university. We have others that are practitioners that are working as judges, as magistrates, as researchers, as correctional officers we've had, as SAPS members. So it really is a very interesting and diverse set of viewpoints that are in very much discussion seminar style classes. So it's always an interesting place to be.
So then following from that, there's a question online. Could you explain the entrance requirements for a PGDip?
So the entrance requirements for a PGDip are also going to be 65 for guaranteed entry, I think. It's all in the law faculty handbook, which you can find on the website on the School for Advanced Legal Studies, or just Google UCT law faculty handbook, you'll find it. But you only need an undergrad degree to have entrance into the PGDip, whereas you need an undergrad and an honours at least, or an LLB counts as an undergrad and an honours because it's a longer degree into the master's program. We don't offer a professional master's at this point.
Sadiqa, does that answer your question about what are the requirements to get into the LLM in criminology? Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering, because you didn't explicitly say it, is white collar crime and like technology related crime also in the courses, or?
So yes, definitely. I mean, forensics and the law looks at fraud examination, which is essentially exactly that. Theories of crime and social order talks about the differences between the way that we think about street crime, the way that we think about white collar. Policing looks at those kinds of things too. So although it's not a specific standalone course, we really, in all of, I mean, the courses that we have, you know, theories, victims, policing, punishment, are the key kind of theoretical strands in the discipline of criminology. And we kind of bring in examples from as wide a spectrum as possible to see how that plays out. So it will absolutely come up. You can definitely do a dissertation that would be related to that. As I said before, we work with lots of colleagues in other places to make sure that you get the substantive expertise that you need in supervision, along with somebody internal to the center.
Shall I just crack into a whole thing of funding?
Crack.
Do you mind? Okay, so funding is always a big thing, and postgrad is no less difficult to find funding for. But I think in terms of faculties, we actually do offer quite a range of postgrad scholarships. PGDips are notoriously difficult to find funding for. I can't think of any scholarships that are geared to PGDips. Most of the funding is either for the coursework and dissertation. In fact, even professional masters has been a bit difficult until now, but that seems to be opening up a little bit. And the NRF funding, for example, is really primarily for research masters, but even they're opening up a little bit as well. So the starting point is the UCT Postgrad Hub. That's like, just go onto their website, go and see what you can find, scramble around, set up an appointment with them, go and have a chat. They have access to mountains of info, and they do know what they're doing. They get scholarship opportunities shared to them, which they usually do try and share on all the time from kind of globally. They also, I think, have a fairly good sense of what funding opportunities are available for universities elsewhere. So that's just a different angle. Although we'd obviously want you to come and study with us, just bear in mind that they have a good sense of what's going on out there. Their email address is here, and I've also put, if any of, oh, you can't see that.
You need to maximize your screen again.
Oh, it's about as big as that.
Yeah, I'm sure you can read it from there then.
Hope you can see that. But if any of you on Twitter or social media, UCT Postgrads is their Twitter account, and they're always posting scholarship opportunities. Really worth keeping an eye. I think the thing to remember is that each scholarship obviously has different rules and criteria, and so that your applications are kind of focused into whichever opportunity you're applying for. And I think the main thing about funding for me always is if you don't ask, you don't get. So even if you feel like you don't qualify, I mean, don't deliberately waste anyone's time if you really don't qualify. But if you're kind of thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure, submit an application anyway. Timing is everything. I think one of the key things to remember is, as far as I've never seen anyone get funding either sort of towards the end of the year of study. So you kind of have to get it before, or the way things work in the faculty is you will usually find out sort of once you're already registered if you've got funding. They're trying to change that so that people are already informed one way or the other by the time they're registered.
But trying to find funding retrospectively or for fee debt, as I'm sure you all know, is not going to happen. So the faculty has a whole range of scholarships, and there is information both on the School for Advanced Legal Studies website as well as on the faculty's website. They are pretty much at a postgraduate level, all merit-based. There are some that have geographic restrictions, so for South Africans only, but there are lots that have no geographic restrictions, no gender restrictions, no demographic kind of markers. There are quite a few that the faculty offers that are open for all applicants, except the main criteria then is about merit. I think I said just now there are no scholarships that I'm aware of that are available for postgrad diplomas. So that is a sort of factor to bear in mind. If you can't find what you're looking for around faculty opportunities, then at number 9 at the bottom, you probably can't see it. Email Law Cares, law literally LAW Cares, CARES, at uct.ac.za, and we will do our best to point you in the right direction. National Research Foundation is a key funder, and as I said just now, they're starting to open up their criteria. They used to be focused on research degrees, but they seem increasingly to be funding coursework postgrad, which is quite interesting. Yeah, just if you just Google postgrad funding UCT, there's a sort of list of pages and sites that you can go to. And I would just strongly recommend spending your time doing that. Handbook 14, again, if you Google UCT handbooks, go to handbook 14, which is the postgrad funding handbook, and just fall through there. Yeah, the top tips are be flexible, keep your marks up, plan ahead. It's all about timing. Start looking today. And I think that was the end of my funding slides.
Yeah, and meet the deadline. I mean, so often students come and see me in like October or November, and they say, oh, you know, where do we get funding? It's too late in October or November. The deadlines have passed. So really it's about being proactive now and finding out what is available and what you need to do to get that available. Almost all of our funding opportunities require a letter of recommendation from somebody. That means you've got to ask me, and I'm in the end of my semester and have, you know, 50 of you asking me for a letter of recommendation, all of which has to get in by the deadline. So you really have to plan. Also, you have to get people who can and will write you a good letter of recommendation, people who know your work, people who can speak to your capability as a scholar. You know, I often get students, especially like in my second year class, a class of 175 students coming to ask me if I can write them a personal letter of recommendation. It's really, really difficult. So you should be making sure that you have people in your current degree program that get to know you, that can speak to your potential as a graduate student, and why we should fund you over the other 50 people who are all deserving, etc., etc. So I think just being as prepared as possible is the best advice I can give you.
Yeah. Are there any questions about funding? Start looking. All right. Well, if there are no more questions from the room and no more questions online, last chance online participants to ask any questions. I don't see any hands. I don't see any typing. Then I think we can close the session, and the recording, if you want to go back for reference or point your friends who weren't able to be here to the recording, it will be on the faculty's YouTube channel, but I'll also share that info on email.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks everyone online.